So here we are. We're finishing it up. We're finally all caught up with everything that has been released up until this point. Even though I took a little bit of a hiatus there, like 2 months or so without making any content on Vagabond, that's nothing compared to the hiatus we've been on from Inoue. And this is just wonderful. This whole manga is just wonderful. It's not even this conclusion, which isn't even really a conclusion. It's not even the end or being caught up with it. It's just wonderful. I just love it. Just going back to it after being away for just a little bit. It was just like slipping in. It was like a nice warm blanket. I don't even know how to explain. It was just so comfortable and nice to be back in the world of Miyamoto Musashi that Inoue has created for us here in the manga. I just love the manga, and I just love the way Inoue has done it and put it together. Of course, I've said it before. He has such a way of honoring and being true to the source material while completely diverging at times from it, but somehow always maintaining the spirit of the original. It's kind of crazy. Then, of course, there's times where he brings certain plot points or even a series of plot points like directly back to exactly what happens in the book before completely diverging again to go do something else. The way that he weaves in and out of the source material while hitting exact plot points and then making up his own plot points entirely while never losing that thread of exact, like, just tonal perfection. I cannot overstate just how well done of an adaptation this is. And I mean that in the true sense of the word adaptation. He is not recreating. This isn't a shot for shot remake. He's taking that source material and he's adapting it into his own version of the story. And it is so mesmerizing just to behold how he does it. It's fascinating and it's great. Now, like I said in the last one, I think I said in the last one, he really pumps the brakes. And now we're in the last 2 volumes of this, or 6, depending on how you read it. And it's just, we continue that massive downshift to the point where, of course, he can't fight anymore, or at least he might never fight again due to the fact that he's still recovering from that injury in his leg. He might never fully recover. He probably will never fully recover from it. And I mean, at this point, he can't even walk without a cane. And then consistently throughout these 2 volumes, he's going to struggle with the idea of what if he can never fight again? Who is he if he can never fight again? He struggles with the idea of what if he isn't invincible like he thought he was, or if he never achieves that idea of being invincible. He's also haunted by visions of everybody that he's killed throughout his life through the entirety of the rest of this. All while never giving up the idea of training. Even without the use of one of his legs, he still continues to just train and go with the motions and go with the flow. First by drawing a circle around him that he can't go outside of simply because he cannot use his leg. And then trying to learn a flow of fighting, of reflexing, of reacting, and countering another opponent without the use of his leg, and now developing a new flow based around his handicap. And in doing this, he also maintains that philosophy of always learning, always evolving, always being taught by his surroundings and his circumstances and the water and the air and the trees and just the flow of nature. Like he did back when he was a child. The mountain will be my teacher or something like that is what he basically decided when he was young, and he still maintains that philosophy to this day. And now he's incorporating that same philosophy and that same learning from nature and his surroundings, but he's also internalizing that now because he now has to learn from his own body and from his own weaknesses, because he now has a massive handicap that he didn't have before. And he's going to have to incorporate both the internal and the external and learn from that at the same time. It's just the philosophies and the way that this is put together and the way that it's presented and the way that it is very, very well done. It always has been, and it just continues to be. Also, coming kind of back to the actual books here, but lost my look. I kind of got out there in the weeds. But anyway, coming back to the actual books here, we also get a massive shift in the way the story is told, because we actually shoot forward years into the future, and now all of a sudden we have a new framing device of the story, which is an old man Marahachi who's recounting the story for this village that he's living in, and kind of telling how Musashi gets to the end of the story. He even teases the small island that the final epic battle will take place on between Musashi and Kojiro. But first, before he can tell the citizens of this little town that story, we have to tell how Musashi got there. And that's kind of our new framing device, which is kind of entirely just an interesting shift for the end of this. And that's what it feels like, at least to me. It feels like we are shifting into the final portion of the story, into the end. What's going to bring us to the climax? Of course, we aren't there yet. We are on a hiatus that has lasted a decade or something like that. But it feels like we are in the end game now. And funny enough, because the first 12 volumes of this, or 10 volumes of this, took like only a couple of years of his time, the end of this takes up a much larger section of his life, but it seems like we're going to not necessarily speed run it, but go through it at a much faster clip, because I don't think as much is happening. And as his life slows down at this point too, especially in these 2 volumes. We also see Kojiro, and we also see that Kojiro actually does end up in that school where they bring him in to be an instructor. And it's not going super well for him right when he gets there, considering the fact that no one really wants a new instructor. Nobody really wants him there. And then when they find out that he's mute deaf, they really don't want him there. Although we don't get to see the way that that plays out. We only get to see him kind of introduced to the school, and somebody says to him something along the lines of, if you can't not communicate with your words, then communicate with a sword. And that's just kind of like how they leave you on that. So that will be quite fascinating to see just what he does, because once he does start sword play, I don't think anyone's going to question his abilities. It'll just be then, how do we learn from this ultimate next level master? I mean, come on, he is just phenomenal. Anyone would be a fool to deny his abilities with a sword. Let's just put it that way. Anyway, after that, pretty much the entirety of the last book is Musashi the farmer. And Musashi comes across this plot of land, and he decides that he's going to work the land. He's going to plow it, and he's going to make this land yield food, and he's going to do it by force. He's literally going to force the land into doing what he wants it to do, and it just doesn't go well. As a matter of fact, he fails repeatedly at every turn. He's going to force it to grow with water. He's going to force it to grow with plowing. He's just going to force it under strength of will. And it's not until another farmer comes along and gives him actually a few pointers and says, look, you see this land? Useless. You've been wasting all of your time. Look over there. That is where the water is trying to tell you that the land will hold, the water will hold, and the land will yield. And it's just fascinating to watch him try to be a farmer, knowing nothing about it and just not ever succeeding because he's doing it wrong. And it's actually in this section of the story, through all of this hard physical labor of just trying to work the land, where he actually starts to kind of rehabilitate his leg a little bit, or just learn to use it, or work on it, walk on it, maneuver with it. He slowly stops using his cane. He also takes on a young boy Iori in this section, where they just kind of learn to live together, and they kind of learn to work the land together. Iori actually wants to learn the sword, but Musashi is much more interested in working the land, although he does eventually start to practice his swordplay more and more and more as this section goes on. And to be quite honest, this is one of those sections that I was kind of hinting at the beginning of the book, where it's much more faithful to the book, where it's kind of been out in him kind of inventing all of these, fantastical things that he's been kind of following through the story in the more recent parts that we've read. Now, all of a sudden, when we're doing the farming bit, it's actually much more book accurate, which either way doesn't matter. I just thought it was fascinating when we kind of snapped back to being a little bit more faithful to the source material. Although, to be fair, it still has that Inoue flair. Everything about it still has that flair that he adds into the story and the art and the storytelling and just the way that he puts it together. It's very impressive. Also, I would say that this section is much more introspective than the rest of the manga that has come before it, but that's not true, because this has always been a series that is focused mainly on introspection. The only difference between this one is the fact that now, instead of being completely introspective while we're in the middle of a fight scene, we're being completely introspective while in the middle of farming. So it's not that it's being more introspective, it's just that it's now being introspective while farming. Although then, once again, he still adds that same visual flair to the bits of farming that he would add to the bits of fighting. So I don't think the shift has been that big at all, at least in the way the story is being told. It's just, it feels like a shift because we're farming instead of fighting. Anyway, the entire village that kind of surrounds the plot of land that he has chosen to start working comes together, and they start to work together because this is coming up on a winter that is going to be the worst winter that they have ever encountered. And they're kind of down and out and kind of hopeless. And it's Musashi's sheer dedication and his drive and his refusal to give up at anything that he does for any reason that kind of adds drive and motivation to the rest of the town. And they all pitch in, and now they're all working together towards the same goal, really through that inspiration that was driven by Musashi. And a little bit of help from that one farmer, the guy that actually knows what he's doing. Then when the actual winter does hit, and it really truly is the hardest winter they've ever been through, and all of the prep, all of the work that they've done to try to survive this winter really doesn't amount to being enough. And now people are literally wasting away as they starve to death. And the last scene of the entire book that we get is Musashi dragging himself into a school that has actually been begging him for a couple seasons now, maybe a couple years, I don't even know, to come and teach for them at their school. And he drags himself in, and the last panel is just him basically saying, "Please help us." And it's just such a powerful scene to end the entire thing. I was like, oh man, that's where you're going to leave me? Oh, that sucks. But it's also wonderful just the way it all culminates and it all kind of ends on that note. It's such a good everything. Everything about it's so good. I can't say enough good stuff about this manga, period. And speaking of the hiatus that he's on, I don't think that this is, I hear a lot of things online of a lot of people in my comment section, like, this will never be finished. This is, we just might as well accept it now that this manga will never get an ending and this is all we'll ever get. And I don't know why there's so many people that are so bah humbug about this. It's just, I don't feel like he's going to give up on this. I feel he will be back. I absolutely believe he will finish this. Dude's only in his 50s. It's not like he's old and, has given up on this entirely. I think he just hit a roadblock of creativity and inspiration and pressure. The pressure of this, I think, is overwhelming, but I think he will be back. I really do. And to be clear, he's not very far from the ending. I mean, I've read the book. I've read the source material. He's getting pretty close to how this should finish. So I feel like there's not that too terribly much left to go. Although, you know what? This guy has a way of like taking tangents and making like that Kojiro side story that we were on for like 9 volumes straight. So maybe he's not that close to the ending the way he draws and writes. I don't know, but I really do feel like he'll be back. I feel like this will get its conclusion. And at the same time, even if he didn't finish it, as tragic as that is, you can always go read the book if you really are curious how this plays out and how it ends, and then just kind of picture it in your mind, although the manga would be much better. Let's be real. Anyway, as an actual ending, or at least as an actual stopping point for the manga thus far, I think it is truly wonderful. I think it functions both as a poignant end to the story that he was telling in this section and a suitable cliffhanger for more to come. I think it really was done well. I think everything, I keep saying, everything he's done in this, I think is done well. And I think I'll go up just a tick from the last one, and I'll probably give this an 8.5. Although, like I said in the last video, I feel like this manga is probably just going to come home with an overall rating of probably right around a 9, just because it's such a wholesome and wonderful experience to go through and read. And it's even nicer after a little bit of a break, because it's just, I forgot just how wonderful it is to sit down with a issue of Vagabond and to just sit down and live in that world for a few hours. Anyway, everybody, as always, the link for my Patreon's in the description below. The link for my Discord's in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.